안녕하십니까? 제17회 제주 포럼에 참석해 주신 여러분 반갑습니다. 지금부터 신흥 핵심 기술 분야 인력 교류 확대를 위한 외교의 역할 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 본 행사는 동시 통역이 제공되며 통역을 원하시는 분들께서는 자리에 놓여 있는 수신기를 착용하시기 바랍니다. 한국어 채널은 1번, 영어는 2번입니다. 감사합니다. 그럼 이번 세션의 진행을 맡아주실 좌장님을 소개해드리겠습니다. 좌장님은 박종흥 에트리 한국전자통신연구원 연구위원입니다. 박종흥 박사님은 ICT 분야 글로벌 기술사업화 전문가로서 우리나라 중소기업 역량 강화 등을 통해 정보통신산업 발전에 기여하고 있고 현재 카이스트에서 개도국의 기술사업화 역량 강화도 지원하고 계십니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 17th Jeju Forum. Thank you for joining us today for Diplomacy for Promoting Human Capital Exchanges in Emerging and Critical Technologies. Simultaneous interpretation is available for this session. For service in Korean, set your device on channel 1. For English, select channel 2. Now, I would like to hand over the stage to Dr. Park, Research Fellow of Electronics and Telecommunications Research Institute, who will moderate this session. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Park.
예, 안녕하세요. 방금
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Park Jong-heung from ATRI. And as for the moderator who introduced me, I was told that it was an AI. It was the first time to be introduced by an AI in my life. I feel very weird. And I realized that AI has developed so much that it's being used in the everyday life. So today, we will be talking about the diplomacy for promoting human capital exchange in emerging and critical technologies. To strengthen the R&D and 5G communication, we have to nurture the manpower, professional ones. And to this end, Korea's leading universities and research institutes are making efforts to promote cooperation among those institutions. And government also provide all the support for that. So in this session, we will talk about the R&D competitiveness. What shall we do in order to improve the competitiveness of those R&D in the emerging and key technology, and what are the obstacles and how we can overcome them. Let me introduce a opening speech speaker. We will invite Director Lee Dong-gyu of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Climate Change and Environmental Science. He is an expert on climate change and environmental diplomacy and has been conducting all the activities to tackle climate change, such as a P4G summit and multilateral environmental agreements, such as the Climate Change Convention and Convention on Biological Diversity from March 2021. After serving as a counselor of the UN mission to the United Nations and deliberator to the Bureau of Climate, Environment, Science and Diplomacy from 2019 and 21, he has been serving as a director of the International Cooperation Bureau of the National Conference on Climate Change and Environment. And he actively participated in preparing measures to respond to the transboundary air pollution, especially fine dust or fine particle tackling issue. Would you please welcome him with a big hand? Thank you.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lee Dong-gyu, Director General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm honored to deliver this opening speech at this important session. Dr. Park Jong-heung of ATRI and panelists who are experts and distinguished audience, thank you for joining us today. I'm glad to hold this important session with the theme of science and technology diplomacy on this beautiful island, in particular, including COVID-19 a lot of changes and crises are bringing about a lot of uncertainties to the economy. In the past, the competition was focused on commodity and energy, but it has expanded its scope to global technology hegemony. They are affecting not only competitiveness in IT, is affecting not only one country's economy but also security and daily life. When you trying to buy a new car, you might ask yourself if you have to buy a EV or a combustion engine car. Under this fast changing environment, diplomatic environment is also changing very fast. Science and technology is more important than ever before. Therefore, IT diplomacy is required to respond actively to this changing environment. The ministry has organized and is operating 7 different key industry policy advisory commission, and we have designated IT cooperation ambassador, and the number of ICT key missions has increased from 36 to 40, and we have also renewed our organizational structure. We also believe that it is the most important to secure talent with expertise and experience. The purpose of this session is to respond to this fast-changing environment by coming up with great policy in a more efficient way to be more competitive in the world. Nurturing experts is very important. That is why many Korean universities and institutes are working together with overseas foreign institutes, and the government is also supporting them. But we need to ask ourselves if the simple approach, past approach, is feasible, or if we need a more innovative approach. Today, many Korean universities and institutes are working together with foreign institutions to become more competitive. Then we need to identify their limitations and challenges as well. This is what I expect from this session as well. I want to ask you to share your ideas to make Korea more competitive, to develop our science and technology, giving us some ideas about our future direction. And today's session is not a government-led advisory meeting. It is a very free forum. Therefore, I expect more innovative and creative ideas and suggestions. Thank you.
네, 이동규
Thank you very much for your wonderful opening speech. Let's move on to the keynote speech. Keynote speech will be delivered by Professor Linda Mills, actually the Vice President of New York University. Sorry that he or she is not able to be here in person, but she sent us a video clip. And as for the Vice President of New York University Vice President, she is a keynote speaker, and Professor Linda studied social welfare, public policy, law, founder of New York University Multicultural Leadership Institute. Vice Chancellor of Mills is a co-creator of Auf Wiedersehen Until We Meet Again, a documentary film that chronicles the trauma that has passed down.
Greetings from New York City. Thank you very much, Dr. Park Jong-young. It is a privilege to provide remarks during this session on diplomacy for promoting human capital exchanges in emerging and critical technologies. It is also, of course, an honor to speak following Director General Lee Tong-kyu from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I wish to extend my gratitude to the Director General for his many years of work on environmental issues and climate change. While I'm with you virtually today, I look forward to returning to South Korea in the near future. At a moment when our globe is facing a multitude of threats, climate change, geopolitical crises, and a pandemic to name just a few, it is refreshing to be able to take a few minutes to reflect on what my institution, New York University, also called NYU, can do to address these issues by working together with other like-minded institutions around the world. NYU is, by design, a global university. We have 3 degree-granting campuses in New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai, and an additional 12 academic centers on 6 continents. Our students come to us from more than 130 countries. NYU is home to more international students than any other U.S. university. We also send more students to study abroad. Our faculty collaborate with colleagues from across the world, and our alumni go on to become leaders in industry, government, and NGOs around the world. Over the years, thousands of South Korean students have attended NYU. In fact, Korea comes in 3rd in terms of students coming to study at our esteemed institution. We also have many faculty who are of Korean nationality or descent. Since I first visited Seoul many years ago and experienced the vibrancy and brilliance of your culture, I knew in my heart of hearts that it was only a matter of time before we would find a South Korean educational partner who shared our DNA, a deep understanding of the impact of working across cultures, languages, and borders to help address the world's greatest challenges. Korea, as you know better than I, is home to many top-tier universities, but over the past few months, we've been working closely with one that shares our values, outlook, and commitment to research and education. And fortunately, they seem to feel the same way about us, which is why we are so excited by our recently established partnership with one of your most venerable educational institutions, KAIST. As I've learned more about KAIST, it is hard to believe its impact on Korea and beyond. It was the longtime home to Professor Gil Nam-jun, who is credited with being one of the first in the world to be largely connected to the internet. Korea's first astronaut, Yi So-yoon, earned both her bachelor's and master's degrees at KAIST. And as my son, who is a competitive gamer, probably knows, KAIST was also where the world's first graphical online games were developed. I should also note that the highly accomplished Dr. Sang-chul Shim, the 8th president of KAIST, was actually an assistant professor at what is today NYU's Tandon School of Engineering some 50 years ago. NYU has also had an impressive share of scientific accomplishments. Samuel Morse, better known as the inventor of the telegraph, was a professor of painting and sculpture at NYU in the 1830s. Benjamin Adler, who was instrumental in the creation of commercial television sets, was acting president of what is now our Tandon School of Engineering. Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin, who were instrumental in developing the polio vaccines, both studied at our School of Medicine. And more recently, NYU grad Adam Mosseri serves as the head of Instagram. Jack Dorsey, one of the creators of Twitter, attended NYU, where he is said to have come up with the idea for the service. Though I must admit he left us before he graduated. So while I'm incredibly impressed by what KAIST and NYU have been able to accomplish on our own, I simply can't wait to see what we will accomplish together. Of course, I knew that Korea has long been a global leader in technology and entrepreneurship, but exploring Seoul a few years back gave me a newfound appreciation for just how remarkable the country's transformation has been. A leader among leaders. More recently, I've had the privilege of witnessing this transformation firsthand. As we've learned more about KAIST and its groundbreaking work with industry partners, its impact is far-reaching. Similarly, NYU's relationship to the tech industry, not just in New York City, but across our global network, is also making its mark. But it's not just our relationships. It's our shared hunger to innovate, to be leaders in this space. On both of our campuses, we appreciate an understanding that we can use technology-based research and education to help address the many challenges and problems that face not only our respective countries, but in fact, around the world. I know I speak for all of us when I say that the sky's the limit to what our combined efforts may lead to in areas such as sustainability, clean and affordable energy, ensuring water supplies around the globe are safe and free of contaminants, and the list goes on. By creating joint research collaborations, establishing joint degree programs, and cultivating cross-national industrial partnerships, I believe our impact will be limited only by our imagination. We've already helped KAIST to set up a home base in New York City. If we are truly bold in our thinking and smart about our planning and implementation, the benefits will reach far beyond our two campuses. When U.S. President Joe Biden visited Korea in May, he was aware that NYU's discussions with KAIST were just beginning and that the potential was far-reaching. He said this about the importance of the relationship between the U.S. and Korea, and I quote, "From fighting this pandemic to strengthening global health security, from increasing our climate ambitions to accelerating climate solutions, from standing up for our shared democratic values and defending a rule-based international order against threats, instability, our alliance is making important contributions to shape the future of our children. And Korea's strong and dynamic economy is a powerful example for the rest of the world." Typically in higher education, we talk about all sorts of ways we measure success. The number of papers we publish, the citations in academic journals. We boast of our acceptance rates, our yield rates, and yes, even the amount of money we raise. But when it comes down to partnerships and exchanges of human capital, I think there's one more critical equation to consider. Is the sum greater than our individual institutional parts? For NYU, when the answer is as clear a yes as it was for us once we got to know our partners at KAIST, we know we're on track to something special. Thank you for having me here today virtually, and I look forward to joining all of you in person in the future. 감사합니다.
예.
Thank you so much. She was a vice chancellor of the New York University, or vice president. I believe that New York University is in charge of training human resources and formed a partnership with the KAIST. Thank you. Let me introduce the next speaker. They will be the lecturers and discussants, and they are experts in their own area. The first speaker is sitting next to me, left to me, Dr. Han Sang-uk, the head of the Quantum Information Research Team at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology since 2012. He has been researching quantum information, particularly quantum key distribution system, random number generators, quantum signature, single photon director, and MV Center-based quantum computer system for Diamond at the KAIST. I find it very difficult to understand what those technologies are. He received the Prime Minister's citation for the science technology promotion in 2012, and he was serving as an advisor to various government ministries and organizations. The second speaker is Dr. Kim Hyung-soo, head of the KT Quantum Infrastructure Innovation Team. Since 1993, he has been conducting R&D on communication technology and currently in charge of developing quantum technology at the KT Convergence Technology Institute Infrastructure DX Research Center. He is also vice chairman of the ITUT Study Group 13 and the chairman of the Working Party 1 in charge of G6 standardization. The third speaker, the last one, is Dr. Cho Won-young. He is a senior researcher of the Software Policy Research Institute. After serving at Samsung Economic Research Institute, he is now with the Software Policy Research Center. He also serves as a professor at Dankook University. His major book include Platform Changing Management, published in 2014, and AI and Social Change, published in 2022, this year. So Han Sang-wook, Dr. Park will begin the presentation first, followed by Dr. Kim and Dr. Jo. And Dr. Han will be talking about the international cooperation in the field of quantum technology. Would you please welcome him with a big hand?
예,
Good afternoon. I am Han Sang-wook. He said those terminologies are really hard to read, and I understand, and I'm a little bit nervous because I have to introduce this hard to understand technology. But today's session, the theme is how to nurture talent. So I will skip most of the technological terms. Still, I have to introduce what quantum is. As you can see here, quantum means that what we don't know is more than what we know. Quantum is an emerging industry. One of the greatest physicists, Feynman, said that I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics, which is a really good relief for me as a quantum researcher. That means it is really hard to exactly understand the technology. That is why what's the most important is human resource, talent. The countries with a lot of quantum talent can become very competitive. The best way to expand human resource is technology exchanges. But in reality, we have heard a lot of quantum nationalism. Here you can see the map. They are all well-known advanced countries. They have a lot of policies to develop quantum technology. For example, US and China have a very severe competition, and many other advanced countries are focusing on developing quantum technology. One of the most representative ones is Europe. 2 to 3 decades ago, Europe used to have their own program where many different countries from the continent can come together. But about 4 years ago, of course, the program is still there, but European countries have started their own individual programs. What does it mean? They are not focusing on cooperation anymore. They are going for nationalism. Why did it happen? It's been 100 years since the technology has emerged. The focus was basic science, but the technology has recently moved from simple basic science to industry. Many anticipate that the technology would change the entire industry dramatically. That is why many countries, a great number of countries, are focusing on developing the technology on their own, not by cooperating with other countries. How can we create, control, and the technology. That is something very hard to understand. But how about their application? This is something that can become very interesting for many people. So the application can have three different categories: computer, communication, and sensor. Many countries are facing cutthroat competition. As for computing application, this is led by the US. The private sector in the US has led this application, computing. And what about communication? China, the Chinese government has been leading this part with a lot of support. How about sensors? Traditionally, for a long period of time, Europe, with its background of a lot of experiences, it has a lot of leading technology in sensors. As I told you earlier, we are seeing quantum nationalism with technology barrier being built. For Korea, it's only been 10 years since we started developing the technology by ourselves in Korea. And starting from 5 years ago, the government has announced some policies to nurture the technology. So the history is short for Korea. That means we need to accelerate our cooperation and exchanges with other countries to develop our own technology. To do that, this year, we will open Quantum Cooperation Center next week in Washington, D.C. This is called Korea-US Quantum Technology Cooperation Center. And it aims to establish, operate joint study centers in the Americas, collect local information, identify and connect new demands for new cooperation, and establish network for Korean scientists. And it also aims to secure necessary technologies that we don't have in Korea by starting joint study with foreign institutes. And we have also already started the project in 2022. We've selected 7, and 3 more will be selected next year. This is different from the previous projects. Why? The previous ones have utilized the network that researchers have, and based on basic technology, they have done some joint study and wrote some papers. But how about this cooperation center? The idea is that in order to secure quantum technology, we need to have some key technology that we don't really have right now. Then in a top-down way, we can secure the technology by utilizing this center. To do that, the organizations under this center can reside in the center, including the keys, and many universities, institutes are joining us. And the 7 organizations most of them are from the US, Harvard University, MIT, Stanford, and those organizations and schools are included. So they can work closely together in a top-down way. We can secure key technology through this cooperation. And next year, We will also open Korea-EU Cooperation Center. This is a first step for our future cooperation. Then, what is the role of diplomacy for quantum science and technology? Let us talk about the role of diplomacy. First of all, as Director Lee said, the ministry is increasing the missions to 40. We want diplomacy to investigate and monitor each country's policy, technology, research group, and human resource through embassy. Secondly, we need a strategy because researchers focus only on technology. They don't really understand strategy, diplomatic strategy. So the diplomatic experts can consider national interest and provide us with great ideas and advice. And lastly, the diplomatic part, especially the ministry, can help us create a good environment. For example, visa exemption to improve the system as a whole so that we can exchange further. Thank you. That concludes my speech.
감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you so much. He delivered a lecture across the quantum technology. As for the quantum technology, it has grown from the pure technology to the other areas that kind of boost competition among different countries. So among different countries, we have to know what are the current situation and what is the cooperation among different countries. And last but not the least, he talked about the recommendations toward the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And whenever we establish a policy, I believe that we need to take into account what is said. Let's move on to Dr. Kim. Would you please welcome him with a warm round of applause? Thank you. As introduced, my name is Kim Young-soo. I am from KT. As for Dr. Han, he talked about the quantum from the perspective of science. But let me talk about the quantum from the industrial perspective. And this is what I'm in charge. I'm with the telecommunication company. So using quantum, how can it make profit? That's the main theme that we are interested in. So let me talk about the quantum internet. This includes quantum. How come we come up with the quantum internet? Because right now we are on the digital internet. And if we shift to the next generation internet, that is quantum. As you see here, back in 1969, digital computer was first invited, and the competence of the digital computer was shared across the U.S. continent. So communication technology was developed so that we can use the capacity or competence of the digital computer. This means that the policies or governance of the policies of internet is possessed by the U.S. That's the reality. Once we have the quantum computer, in which the U.S. is fully making investment, then all the other researchers are expecting that quantum computer will be launched right away, or sooner or later. However, in this era, Europe, Asia, and other regions are competing to develop the quantum computer. So it's highly competitive in the quantum internet development. Then how do we develop it? Protocol. You may believe that this is a diplomatic term. As it says, the international pledge or agreement in which countries agree to proceed or act in a certain manner. This kind of diplomatic term is very important to the telecommunication too. In order for the different ends on both parties, or the both parties on the different end to communicate, they need to work on a certain standard, and in this case, that is the protocol. And as said, the international communities need to agree on the protocol. That's why we have ITO, ISO, Standardization Organization, or IETF, Internet Protocol Organization. They are involved in the process of devising the protocol for the quantum internet. Actually, these organizations are competing to develop the protocol for that too. But some may question whether it can be done without difficulty. There is a dilemma in the standardization community. Why? Because the general public is not interested in the standardization. As you see here, the Bismarck of Germany once said that people are not interested in the process of making. One of the examples is sausage. You may not imagine how cruel it was to make a sausage. It is similar to the laws and standards. And then consensus. In order to devise a protocol, we need to reach consensus. The international organizations need to reach consensus to have a standard approved. And then they need to be used across the world as standards. But as I said, there are competition among different regions, and then system vendors and system operators and network operators, they are in different position. As for the equipment vendors, they produce their system and want to sell it at large profit. But network operators want to have the system which is affordable but have a high quality. And consumers want to utilize all the services at our affordable prices. So our interests are intertwined and they are in conflict. And we have current issues such as the hegemony conflict between China and the USA. So if I go to the meetings of the standard organization, the US side approaches me and he says that you will side with me. And then next time I will be approached by China. And the China representative asks me to side with them too. So there is a conflict between the two great powers. And then as for the technologies, in order for us to introduce it, it takes about 6 weeks, but now it takes longer than 20 weeks because of the conflict over this and the disrupted supply chain. Then let me have a look at the quantum technologies in the perspective of Korea. Do we understand the implications of the quantum technology? What kind of changes it will bring about? As for digital internet, it plays a very important role. When you think of that, you may realize the impact that quantum platform will bring about in the future, but we do not think of it as of today, not yet. And then experts or lack of experts. In July this year, we have different members who attended the meetings of international organizations. And from Korea, we have only 4 representatives who attended the meeting, including me, and another person who was a vice chairman, and another person who was leading a small subcommittee. And those people are experts on standardization. In other words, we do not have enough human sources who have a good understanding of quantum technology. We have different standardization organizations at the national level or regional level and international level. We also have them in Korea. Do we have comparative organization in Korea? No, I don't think so. And fourth and the last, human resources. This is the information of the team leaders. Sorry that we have a information of a privacy. U.S. and Britain and Canada, they are government officials, or they serve for government organization. Some of them are in the committee of the government organization, but as for Korea, I'm the representative, and I'm not from the government organization, but rather a private corporation. So that's the difference that we see. Then what is the recommendation? This is the recommendation that I came up with. As Dr. Han said, for the next generation, the quantum will be the key to the technology. So we have to share this understanding across the country, and quantum technology will determine the competitiveness of a country. And as for the standardization or the process of implementing or establishing standards for the quantum internet, we do not have enough human resources or experts on that. To train them and educate them, we need some investment. And then we also need to have a collaboration among different regions, players, and stakeholders. And we have to have a good insight whenever we collaborate with other partners. So we need to have a good exchange of human resources to encourage cooperation among different countries. And last, I'm going to show you one of the activities supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is one of the programs that we may implement. As for those people who are experts on science and technology, we need to train them so that they can have a diplomatic mindset. And if we do so, we can be at a better position whenever we work in the international arena. And one of the senior heads of the national representative, once the person is not available, the junior level of a diplomat may attend the meeting. That's what we need to follow suit. So whenever we have a certain issues such as the standardization of quantum technology, we have to have those experts who have a insight in diplomacy to take part in the process. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are living in the digital era and enjoy the benefit of that, but it seems that we are approaching the quantum era, which is very exciting, but at the same time dreadful. Unless we take a good preparation for that, we may not be able to enjoy the full benefit. Thank you for your good presentation. With the competition growing more intense, we need to have more support from the government and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It should be involved in the standardization process too. Thank you for making a good representation. Let's move on to the other topic, which is AI. Dr. Zhou will be making the presentation. Please welcome him with a big hand. Thank you.
그러니까 방금
Good afternoon. I am Jo Won-young from Software Policy Research Institute. Today, I'd like to talk about HR exchanges in AI. I've been working as the member of Diplomacy Advisory Committee of the ministry, and I got my own definition for diplomacy, IT diplomacy. It is to strengthen our IT capacity to make Korea more competitive in the world. And human resource, why is it important in IT diplomacy? It is important to strengthen our competitiveness, and it is important to turn the IT technology to our national interest. About 250 years ago, while we experienced industrialization, as many are well aware, the core technology of the industrial era was invented in European countries, Germany, the UK, and France. But it was the US who successfully turned the technology into their national interest to become number one in the world. I believe there are many reasons why the US became number one, not the European countries. I believe the most important part is the connectivity between the technology and national interests. Of course, the European countries have had a lot of good universities, but they have focused on humanities rather than technology. They have also followed traditional approach, like internship approach. But during the same period, U.S. universities have focused on practical practices. During the 1850s, U.S. universities opened engineering programs, and in the 1880s, the U.S. has established a system where they can nurture a lot of IT talent. That way, they nurtured a lot of engineers so that they can work for their industrial development to build a lot of infrastructure, including railways and roads, to successfully turn IT competitiveness into national interest. Many say that we are living in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And what is the most important in this era is communications, quantum technology, and AI and software. We call them digital technologies. In this era, digital technology talent is seeing a growing number of demands, but unfortunately, it takes 4 to 10 years to nurture good talent. The demand is growing very fast, but the supply cannot keep up with it. And quality experts, and also some experts who can fully utilize technology. These are all different categories of experts, and all of them are lacking. That is why many people are trying to attract talent from other countries. We do some many researchers are engaged in some joint research with foreign researchers. As you're well aware, programming language is the common language in many different countries. Therefore, HR exchanges are easy in this field. As you can see from this slide, this is the data from OECD. From the right side, you can see the countries who are attracting AI talent, and on the left, they are countries where the talent is living. And in the blue part, you can see those advanced countries with high wage standard. And on the left, you can see they have good educational system, but their working condition and wages levels are not very high. And I checked the OECD data and changed it into the recent one. And fortunately, our ranking has increased. Korea's ranking has increased. And AI and digital new technology sector, in order to attract foreign talents, and there will be more effort to do so and to have joint research projects with foreign talent. And there are two reasons behind this trend. The technology has become mature and the speed is very fast. They are being used increasingly in many different industries. In the AI sector, there will be more demands for AI talent. So there will be more, even more countries who would try to attract talent from other countries. And digital technology is super connectivity technology. Therefore, interoperability is really important and standardization is important. Therefore, so exchange of talent will become even more important in the future. Secondly, not only AI, but also other new digital technologies. This is a common issue, technology blocking. Digital technology is key to a nation's power, so many nations are trying to keep their talent from leaving the country, and they are also trying and developing their technology. But this is something individual country cannot do by themselves. So we can see a trend. A few number of countries come together to create a block and build a barrier from other blocks. So this is an overall trend of this sector. Third, trust and fairness and ethics of the AI is required by the civil society. OECD G20 announced a lot of ethics standards regarding AI, and there have been a lot of R&D activities to follow those standards. In order to make AI more trustworthy, we need to develop more technology. And just like we respond to climate change by working together with the international society, we also need joint research in the AI sector to make it more ethical. From the perspective of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what efforts are needed? First of all, it needs to renew its policy to attract foreign talent, for example, by easing visa standards for them. But that's not the end of the story. we need to make sure we need to retain them in Korea. We need to make sure they live in Korea for a long period of time. So we need policies that can take care of their whole life cycle. Secondly, this is about overseas missions, and this is what was mentioned earlier today. I will make it shorter. What is the most important for human resource exchanges? The role of overseas missions is very important as a hub and platform. Lastly, I want to suggest that many say that the U.S. is the most attractive partner in the AI sector. But we need to expand our partners according to our purpose. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
예, 좋은
Thank you, Dr. Cho. AI, I believe that we have many challenges in terms of AI. One of them is human resources exchange. Thank you for making a focus on it. Attracting human resources or acquiring human resources is the key or greatest importance today. And also we are forming some blocks around AI and technologies, and different blocks are competing against each other. And you talked about the ethical aspect of AI and also ask us what kind of support they expect to get from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you. And before we move on to the next stage, I'm going to take one or two questions from the floor. As you see, AI and quantum are the main technologies that we are covering today. But 5G, 6G, telecommunication technologies, or semiconductor display technologies are the ones that we are interested in, and they deserve in-depth discussions too. So as for me, I will be able to answer those technologies too. So would you please ask any questions about those topics that I mentioned? Any comments or questions? Any comments or questions are welcome. I believe that all the three speakers has made a wonderful presentation. And as for quantum technology, it's a very sophisticated technology which is difficult to understand. And I think we have one person who wants to ask a question or comment. Thank you. To our shame or to our regret, or in a sense, because of a too much or too fast advancement of the quantum technology, there is a unbalance or imbalance. You said that we have a Korea-US Quantum Cooperation Center, and we are making investment in it, which means that we understand quantum technology is of great importance, and we need to make investment into that. Also, Team Leader Kim said technology is important, but at the same time, standardization is another topic that we should pay attention to. As a government officials, I'm very sorry that the Korean government doesn't seem to provide the right level of support, whereas other countries provide a very good support. When I go to the bookstore Kyobo, and others, the quantum technology books are in the top ranking, which is what we see. However, the government does not follow what's going on in the market. And as for Team Leader Kim, do you understand the reason why the government is not providing full support and the general public is not that much interested in the topic? Would you tell me the reason why? Thank you for asking me a wonderful question. Let me give you a simple answer. The Korean society do not fully understand how to take advantage of the standards. Sorry that I talk about the other countries' cases. About 20 years ago, the U.S., especially Canada and U.S., so North America, they had the Ministry of Commerce which sent the representative to the standardization meetings. Why? Because the standardization may become a barrier in international trade. So in order to prevent it from happening, they just wanted to make sure that there are any issues that may become a trade barriers in the future. They are not interested in the standardization of the technology. However, they want to know whether it can affect the trade policies or diplomatic policies in the future. That's why they sent the high top-level government official to the kind of meeting. And as for Korea, I believe that there is a beginning of the change taking place. So let me give you an example. In Korea, when we had a meeting, I just, on purpose, had a session for the voting of the quantum in the night or at night. And the U.S. representative left earlier because of the flight schedule. But since the representative of U.S. left, we thought that we would be able to have a good agreement or easy agreement on the issue. However, there was somebody else who replaced the U.S. representative. And digital internet is unstable technology-wise. However, it has widespread because it's very easy to use. And by supplementing the technology, we will be able to utilize it in different fields. And as a person who is an expert on technology, I talked about the advantage of using that technology. But the new internet was suggested by China. And once it was revealed that the suggestion was made by China, all the atmosphere has changed. Because how to use such a technology can be determined taking the diplomatic issues into consideration. In that sense, I believe that the diplomatic professionals should be engaged in the process too. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I believe that you have some questions, comments too, but since time is limited, let's move on to the next phase. To take a full utilization of the session, we collected some of the questions. So let me ask a question that we have prepared. As for the major countries, they are trying to step up solidarity to foster and secure scientific and technological human resources. And right now, we are witnessing some of the blocks formed in the international community so that they can obtain hegemony over a certain technology. So for the key technology, we need to come up with strategies. And in that perspective, can you tell me who will be our key partners or camp or blocks that we need to join when it comes to the quantum technology? So for each block, do you have or do you come up with different strategies of cooperation or collaboration? That's the question that we want to ask to the three speakers. And we want to get honest response from you. And at the end, 5G and semiconductor and display, I will add some comment on those technologies. So would you please answer the questions?
제가 아까
When I delivered my presentation, I focused on application of quantum technology to make it easier to understand, and I told you China, the US, and European countries are leading the three different categories, but the details are really hard to understand. It's really, really hard to categorize. What does it mean? The basic science and industrial technology, they cannot be clearly divided. Communication, computing, and sensors, those applications, it seems that you can clearly categorize the three sectors, but their source technologies are actually connected to each other. So which country is the best country for us to cooperate with? This is a question that is hard to answer, and the answer would vary depending on different situations. One of my concerns as a researcher is that the same thing goes for the AI and many other technologies. US-China conflict is a really serious problem. As a researcher, I'm not really sure if it's the right thing, if the partner is the right partner for me. We have some programs that we are working on with the US, and last year I heard that Korea China Science and Technology Cooperation Center invited me to their seminar. And it is, of course, we can exchange some ideas about the technology itself, but after the seminar, we have some private dialogue and explore ways to cooperate with each other. Then is it right decision for us to do that with China? Can we do that, or who can be the advisor for us? This is our question, but we can't find anyone to ask that question. I really wanted to give you the right answer to your question, but I don't really have the right answer. Things can be different in different situations. From the perspective in national interest, we need to reach a consensus across the nation. That requires meetings. Thank you.
저는 시간도
Thank you. Since you do not have enough time, I'm going to make my comment very brief. I cannot agree more with what Dr. Han said. Not only the value of technology, we need to think of the interest of our country. Whenever we have any guidelines for that, it's going to make our jobs much easier. Some may think that you try to control what the private sectors are doing, but at least as for this kind of key strategic technologies, we'd love to have guidelines so that we can have a case-by-case evaluation. If you have that kind of meeting or gatherings, that's going to be of a great help to us. Thank you.
네,
I received the question before I came here, so I wrote down my answers by finding some data. So there are the current key countries and the future key countries, regardless of its HR exchange or cooperation. We rely heavily on the U.S. According to OECD data and private sector LinkedIn data, you can figure out the AI talent flow in the world. As I told you earlier, those talent who graduated from Korea's university and leave Korea to overseas countries, or vice versa, brain drain and brain gain, minus and plus, we have the similar numbers. Regarding brain gain, experts, AI experts, 28% of them in Korea attained their degrees in overseas countries, and 80%, more than 80% from the US. So we rely heavily on the US. Of course, Korea also has great institutes. And there are people who got degrees, and 20% of them leave Korea to work for big techs in foreign countries. And NYU also has a Korean professor. So the number is 20%, and among them, 70% work for US companies. And as for brain gain and brain drain, we heavily rely on the US. As for joint research, 55% of papers are based on international cooperation. This is a high share, and half of them is the ones that we have written by working together with the US researchers. So how about our future direction? We need to remove key cooperation countries. We need to lower our dependency on certain countries. Depending on our purposes, we need to diversify our partners. In order to develop top AI technology, of course, we need to work together with the US, but that's not the entire picture. We need to become more efficient from some perspective, or industrial cooperation is also important. As you can see from my slide, the last slide, our income level is not very high. There are many countries with lower income level but higher technology income. Those Southeast Asian countries are among them. Turkey, Malaysia, and Indonesia, those countries are some of the examples. Their research capacity are among top 20, and there are actually actual examples of cooperation with them. we can explore some cooperation opportunity with them. Of course, they are not top-tier institutes, but they have a good enough technology. And how about industry? Of course, the US and European countries are the best, but India, Singapore, and Poland, they have a lot of AI startups. So we can have a industrial cooperation with those countries. That's all from my side.
도 나-
Thank you very much. We have less than 2 minutes left. Is there any question from the floor? If not, let me give you some comment on 5G and 6G and semiconductor and display. Quantum technology and AI are different story. As for the other sectors that I talked about, we are in a competitive position, which means that we have to think of how to shape or form a block to our advantage. As for the developing countries, they just want to cooperate with us, so we can make a choice out of them, which one shall we cooperate together. But as for the other countries at par with us or above us, we need to make a decision at the kind of national level, taking our national interest into consideration. So that's all the comments that I have to share with you today. And as for the lectures and discussions that we have today, we will have an in-depth discussion later on so that we can come up with the recommendations or formal recommendations to be presented to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which means that we will have subsequent meetings and discussions later on, and our ideas will be all summarized and written in the recommendation. You may have witnesses or thought that this is not an easy area to follow up. Why? Because the technology continues to advance. Do you believe that you can use the phones that you used 10 years ago? No way. You want to use it, the better ones, or the time. But as for diplomacy, it works in a very different setting. Depending on the situation, what you will be saying may become different every day. You may retract what you said yesterday. Whereas technologies need continue to advance looking into the future. So diplomatic issues are much more complicated for us to tackle. And when it's combined with technology, it will become even more complicated. But once we have our experience accumulated, I believe that our future generations will find it less difficult to cover. But in the end, we will need to have human resources who are specialized in both technologies and diplomacy. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for joining this session. This concludes our session today.